Today we'll continue with our mini course of 4 sessions, getting acquainted to Israeli women's Midrashim, written by Israeli women, contemporary Israeli women, of course, using the literary vehicles of the rabbis of 2,000 years ago to express themselves in religious terminology and add their perspectives to our Jewish bookshelf. The Midrashim that we will read together today are not easy. They deal with trauma of the October 7th. And if you feel that it's too triggering, so, think a bit and allow yourself to cry or stop if you don't feel comfortable with this. The 2 first women that I'll introduce were in the kibbutzim for many hours in the shelter rooms, losing family members and expressing some of it in the Midrashim. The third one was in a kibbutz that the terrorists didn't manage to break in. But she shares her experience as a wandering Jew since then. So the first Midrash was written by Liora Eilon from kibbutz Kfar Azza. How did I get to Liora Eilon from kibbutz Kfar Azza? I have a friend who is the reform rabbi of the kibbutzim of Sha'ar HaNegev for the last 6 years. And over the years, she told me about different events that she did with the congregants in the different kibbutzim, bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah for the 80-year-olds that never had one. What does she do in the high holidays? Very moving stories. And on October 7th, when we were in the shelter room in Jerusalem and listening to the radio, we heard again and again the names of all these kibbutzim that I know of from her stories. So on Motzei Shabbat, Motzei Chag, I called her. She was totally broken because they called her all day to ask for help. And I learned from her later on, after she visited and was a chaplain of her congregants for a few months, that some of her the women in different congregations do write. So she gave me their contact details, and I turned to some of them, and some did write Midrashim because they knew how to do this and they wanted to do this. They didn't write only Midrashim, they wrote also Kinot for Tisha B'Av, and they enable us to relate to this horrible experience also in religious words or atmosphere. So, who is Liora, the one from Kfar Azza? She is a grandmother for 7. While she and her granddaughters and daughter-in-law were in the shelter room, her son, that was the commander of the Kitat Konenut, of those kibbutznikim that defend the kibbutz, was killed outside. And earlier, and maybe even today, she used to be a group facilitator. Interesting groups she facilitated over the years, groups that has to do with conflicts in Israeli society, like groups of ultra-Orthodox and secular people, of right-wing and left-wing folks, of Jews and Arabs. And she was a serious peace activist. And she found herself there for many, many years in the room, and then afterwards wandering from place to place. So she will share with us her experience, of course, through projecting it on someone else. She relates to a Talmudic story, and what she's doing is that she reads it upside down. She turns all the meaning and somehow makes the story one that is effective for her and for our days. And I think she's doing good to the story itself originally. Her reading is really original and wonderful. The name of her Midrash is The Power of a Community to Diminish Suffering in the World. And she relates to the verse in Lamentation in Megillat Eicha, "Cry, she will cry at night," which is told about Jerusalem, that represents the nation that is mourning over her pain and losses and suffering. So first she quotes the Talmud in Sanhedrin on this verse. Why does this verse say at night? At night, for all who cry at night, one who hears their voice cries along with them. So the Talmud already notices that, like Midrash is doing, put the light on one word. And why dafka, especially at night? Because at night we have less defense mechanisms, we feel different, and maybe we hear more clearly, and maybe we have room in our hearts more to someone who suffers. This is the Talmudic concept. And now what she's saying, what will she say about it? She's saying, cry, she will cry. This is none other than a command. Cry, you will cry. She's reading the word tivke, cry, not as a description on this woman, Jerusalem, or this Jerusalem as the whole nation. She, tivke, she will cry. No, it's a you, ata tivke. Like an order on us. Ata, you will cry for whom? Let's see. One must cry at the sorrow of one's neighbor whose son or daughter had died. For thus he takes away a little of their sorrow and puts himself a little in their place. At night, for in the daytime their neighbors see their grief and may cry with them. At nighttime, people are left alone with their grief, and this is why it's written, cry, she will cry, that their neighbor cry with them at night, and as the weeping and sorrow are shared, they are diminished a little in the world. So she first relates to the word cry, tivke, and demands from each of us to cry, and with whom? To cry with our neighbors in pain, and dafka, precisely at night, because night is actually when people are left alone. People help you all day long, but when they go to sleep, you are left alone with your grief, with your thoughts. So she's asking not to leave those people at night, but be with them also at night. And then she's going to quote Talmudic story and reinterpret it. There was a woman who was Rabban Gamliel's neighbor, whose son died, and she would cry for him at night. Rabban Gamliel heard her voice and cried along with her until his eyelashes fell out. The next day, his students took note and removed her from his neighborhood. This is the Talmudic story from Sanhedrin. Rabban Gamliel was the leader of the Sanhedrin after the fall of the Second Temple. A very important figure. We need to study with him in the morning. We need him to function. And as he was crying so hard at night with his neighbor, the students saw that he can't function in the morning, so they removed her from the neighborhood. Not an easy story originally, but now she's going to read it in a different way and do some redeeming this story from its problem. But Rabban Gamliel, as Liora is telling us, these are her words, but Rabban Gamliel was fulfilling what was written, cry. She will cry at night. So why did they remove her from his neighborhood? He was fulfilling the mitzvah that she sees as a mitzvah, the demand from us to cry for others. So why to remove her? His students said, because his eyelashes fell out, and it was because he was crying alone. His neighbors didn't hear him crying, and didn't cry along with him for that neighbor who lost her child. That is why we removed her from the neighborhood. Because she, in their eyes, was like Abraham, our father, of whom it said, I'll stop here and explain. The students saw that he doesn't function, and they blamed in their heart his neighbors that hears him crying and are not there for him. Don't help him, don't cry with him, and remove some of the pain from him too. You know this physics law, I don't know how to say it in English, the matter, that there is a unique amount of energy, and if you use it like this, fine. If you move it like chok shimur hachomer, you can use it like this or like this, and it can change shapes, but it's always the same amount. So I feel like there is a chok shimur ha'etzev. There is this law that there is a certain amount of pain, and we either share it or someone has to carry the burden and fall apart. So he shared the pain of this lonely woman, but nobody shared the pain with him because his neighbors they didn't have the empathy like he does. So they decided to remove her from this neighborhood for a certain reason, because she had the quality of our father Abraham. What quality of our father Abraham? Now she will quote a different Midrash about Abraham, and we will learn something new about this woman, and we will understand why she's being removed. So this Midrash that we're going to read now about Abraham and his special quality is on the words lech lecha, go. And you know that Abraham was chosen to be our leader in the Bible with no explanation. Why did God choose Abraham? The Bible doesn't say. The rabbis couldn't stand it, and they came up with many ideas why it was Dafka, precisely Abraham. Which qualities did he have that symbolized our destiny or our essence? So we will read one of them, and this is the same quality that Liora think the student noticed both in Abraham and in the neighbor. What was Abraham, our father, like? Like an amphora of persimmon fragrance, sealed shut by a tight cord, laid aside in a corner, whose scent doesn't carry. But when it's stirred, its scent diffuses. Thus the Holy Blessed One said to Abraham, our father, move yourself from place to place, and your name will grow great in the world. Go you. So the beloved famous Midrash Rabbah is telling us that Abraham had this unique smell, which is the spiritual capability, beauty or greatness or power. And he was like a persimmon fragrance that it was considered the best bosim, the best smell in the rabbi's days. But this ability or power or spirituality really was sealed shut in himself very strongly. And when God tells him move, he asks to spread in the world Abraham's spirituality, really. That is like that everyone will enjoy this fragrance. So now they ascribe this woman a specific capability that they want to share with the rest of the world. Let's see. The students sought to remove her out of her neighborhood, that she would stir about in the world, going from one neighborhood to another, crying for her son, and her voice would be like a shofar that sounds from one end of the earth to another, calling out, "Cry, you will cry in the night, for you are the community of Israel." And so Rabban Gamliel will not cry alone for her in the night, but the people of his community and all the communities will cry along with them. And through the sorrow will diminish a little in the world. So what they figure out is that if they remove her from neighborhood to neighborhood, they will teach people to cry, develop this empathy to notice other people in their suffer, and slowly crying with her or helping her in other ways, and it will diminish a little bit the weight, the unbearable weight that she's carrying alone. She and Rabban Gamliel together. And since she stirred about in their neighborhoods, the people cried along with her, and their tears cleansed their souls. And so her mind eased a little, and she found some respite for her soul. So this is a very gentle and sweet, very gentle way by Liora to share with us her experience or her wishful experience. It's too difficult to be alone at night. It's too difficult to cry when other people don't hear. Please be with us. Something interesting about this Midrash is that Liora told me recently that she shared it with someone and he told her, but in the end, the woman is still there in the streets, in the neighborhoods. You didn't bring her home. And she looked at him and she said, yes, this woman doesn't have a home yet. She still wonders, which is the fate of so many Israelis now, both from the south and from the north, people who, thank God, didn't suffer, from the tourists, but move from place to place with no home. And we should see them both day and night. The next Midrash that we will read is a series, a trilogy of 3 Midrashim written by Nurit Hirschfeld-Skupinski from Nachal Oz, kibbutz Nachal Oz. Nurit is a mother of 3, a wife and a mother of 3, and she has a PhD in Midrash, which she studied in Hebrew U many years ago. And she has been teaching Midrash in colleges in the Negev, in Be'er Sheva and in Achva. And she told me when I asked her to write Midrashim that she actually is already writing Midrashim because she has been teaching over the years the series of Midrashim in Eicha Rabbah on the Churban, on the destruction of the temples, the first and the second temples. And she got very attached to these stories. And what she did was that she took several of the traditional stories on the destructions of the Bible and intertwine her story or the stories around her with the traditional Midrashim. So what I will do now is that I will read to you 3 of her pieces. Each of them we will read first the traditional story, and then we will see what she's doing with them from the experiences of her kibbutz and the kibbutzim around her. The first midrash that we will read is about a woman named Miriam bat Tanchum. But it will sound very familiar to you because usually we read the story, we name the woman Hannah v'shivat banea, Hannah and her 7 sons. But there are many versions for this story. There are actually the Babylonians versions of this story and the Israeli versions of this story. And I'm talking about versions from when the oral Torah was said and written, not our days. Later on, Middle Ages and afterwards, after the book Yosifun, which was in the end of the first millennia, named her Hannah. Everyone else already related to her as Hannah. But and he was following Josephus Flavius, calling her Hannah. So, but originally, at least in Israel, her name was Miriam. So the story is quite familiar. I will read only some of it from the original story because it's a long midrash, and I'll tell you what happens in between the things, and then we see how she's using this to talk about other people who lost many family members on the 7th and 8th October, in October. Midrashim of destruction. The first paragraph that we will read is the introduction to all the Midrashim that she is writing, and I brought it here. When the home was destroyed, when our world on October 7 was destroyed, it seemed to us as though the stories of the destruction emerged from out of letters 2,000 years old. The words were made flesh, becoming a grieving, anguished, despondent reality. And the things, they are hard to utter, and the mouth cannot articulate them. So, first of all, immediately, her reality echoed the stories that we know from the earlier destructions, but it's so hard to articulate it. It's hard, we think, to articulate it because emotionally it's difficult to confront pain and picture it and describe it, but it also, quoting this expression, hard to utter, and the mouth cannot articulate, is taken from the rabbis when they want to say something that is heretic and very difficult to say spiritually. For instance, I remember that the first midrash that I studied that used this is the midrash on Bereshit Rabbah, on the murder of Abel by Cain, and it's Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that wants to give a parable to this murder, and he wants to say something bad about God, noticing this fight and not stopping it and helping Abel. So before he gives his parable and talks about it, he uses exactly these words, that he's going to say something that he shouldn't say, that you can't say, and then he says it. So she hints to us that some of the things that she will say in the Midrashim are problematic and not easy to say, not only emotionally, but either theologically or socially. So let's see the first midrash on Hannah and her 7 sons, which is now told on Miriam and her 7 sons. And first we will read it from a Charaba, the original traditional midrash. The story of Miriam bat Tanchum, who was taken captive along with her 7 sons. Caesar took them, put them in 7 different rooms. He brought out the first son and said to him, "Bow down to the idol." He, the son, replied, "God forbid, I do not bow to the idol." He, the Caesar, said to him, "Why?" And the answer, "Because thus it is written in our Torah, I am God, your Lord." He took him out and killed him straight away. So the son wouldn't bow to the idol. This is the period of the torment that Israelis, the Jews, had to go through when they didn't want to change their religion, to give up on Judaism. There are many stories about this period. So this son rejects, he quotes a verse that says that only God is our God, so I can't bow to the idol, and he's being murdered for that. And now I skipped it's a long midrash. Each kid is being brought separately, and their mother is with the scissor in the room watching this all along. And each of them is bringing a different pasuk, a different verse, rejecting the demand of the Caesar to bow to the idol and give up on Jewish monotheism or Jewishness generally. So each of them is being murdered in front of her. He brought the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. And when the seventh is being brought, this one is the youngest one. And now the story is wider. He brought out the seventh, and he was the youngest of them all. He said to him, my son, interesting, it's also a manipulation, bow down to the idol. He replied, God forbid. Of course, now not, brings his verses. There is a long conversation between them, and he's about to be murdered in front of his mother. He immediately commanded that he be killed. His mother fell upon her son, hugging and kissing him, and she said to him, my son, go to Abraham, the father of all of you, and tell him, so says my mother, don't be too full of yourself, and say, I built an altar, I laid on it my son Isaac. For our mother built 7 altars and laid 7 sons on them in one day. You, the trial, and I, the deed. While she was kissing and hugging him, Caesar gave the order, and they killed him before her. With time, that woman lost her mind and fell from the roof and died, fulfilling what was written, she who bore 7 was wretched. And the bat called out, saying, the mother of all sons is rejoicing. And the Holy Spirit cried out, saying, for these do I weep. So this mother asks her young son that when he gets to Shamayim, to heavens, he will challenge Abraham and tell him, don't be so pleased with yourself, or so don't think that you're the most saint of all. Your trial was much easier. It was only a trial, and look at me, what happened to me. She died falling from this roof. In the different versions, there are different descriptions how she died. This one is very famous, either committing suicide or just from losing her mind falling. But it ends beautifully with different spiritual entities that relate to her pain. One says on her, quotes on her from Jeremiah, that she's broken. But the bat kol is saying, surprisingly, mother of sons is rejoicing. Maybe she's rejoicing that her chinuch, that she managed to teach them well how not to leave God. Or maybe because now she reunites with them after she dies, so she's probably rejoicing. And the Holy Spirit quotes Eicha, quotes lamentation, and cries for her, for them. So now we will begin the Midrash of Nurit Hirschfeld-Skupinski with her experience. When the temple was destroyed, the 7 sons of Miriam, Bat Tanchum, were murdered before her eyes, for they refused to bow down to the idol. When our world was destroyed on October 7th, grandmothers and grandfathers aunts and uncles stood facing burnt, wrecked homes of whole families that were no more, with shocked, silent gaze, as though turning to the men of status and authority, entrusted with the security and future of the nation, screaming in horror, "Where were you? We, the act, and you failed the trial." I'll stop for a second. What she describes here is something that she saw in her bare eyes, and I also saw it in the, in YouTube. You can find it yourself. Families that their family members are lost. Some people lost 6 family members, and when they stand in front of the people who were supposed to take care of them, either politicians or, I don't know, high commanders, are screaming at them something similar to what Miriam is asking to say to Avraham. What's going on here? What's going on here? How can it be? And she goes on, Miriam bat Tanchum knew that her children chose death so that they would not commit Yehareg ve'bal ya'avor. Yehareg ve'bal ya'avor is a sin that you just shouldn't do in any case. You can't do this. So bowing to the idol is one of them. And her end was that she lost her mind, fell from the roof and died. And the Holy Spirit cried out, saying, for these do I cry. Yet these family members, what will become of them who have not even that meager comfort? What will the Holy Spirit cry out for the women and men of the Gaza envelope whose families were erased in one day? So the similarity of standing in front of someone with power and trying to scratch their defense mechanisms, or just trying to appear on their radar and show them how bad things are and how unfair they are. She found this opportunity by using Miriam's horrible experience and by identifying with her, but just this time in the worse conditions, that these people didn't choose to die, and who knows if divinity can comfort them and how. Her second Midrash is dealing with another story that happened when the Roman ruled Israel. And the story is about Beruria that we mentioned on our last session in the Midrash last time, that Rivka Lubitch wrote about the Beit Midrash of Beruria, the house of study, this imaginary house of study of women run by Beruria. So who is this Beruria? Beruria is the daughter of Hanina ben Tradion, who was one of the 10 Aseret Harogei Malchut, the 10 people that the 10 rabbis that Roman killed, tormenting them horribly for teaching Torah and in public and not obeying the rules that they put on them. And Beruria was the wife of Rabbi Meir, a very beloved rabbi that we won't go now into her and him because this is not shiur on Beruria, although I love teaching the shiur on Beruria, but I want to relate here to the story of Beruria's sister that is being told in the Talmud in Avodah Zarah tractate. So we will read about Beruria's sister and about similar stories of our days after October 7th. Beruria, wife of Rabbi Meir, the daughter of Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion she was. She said to him, to her husband, "It disgraces me that my sister is sitting in a brothel." So we hear that her sister was kidnapped and taken to be a whore. He took a basket of dinars and went. He said to himself, if sin was not done with her, a miracle will be done. If she sinned, no miracle will be done for her. He realizes that to get her out of there, he will need a miracle. So in his mind, he has this concept that miracles can happen only to people that don't sin, and that to be a whore is to sin. So he's not sure if he would be able to get her out of there, and he's trying. He went and disguised himself as one of the cavalrymen. He said to her, obey me. She said to him, I'm menstruating. He said to her, I'm burning up. In a different translation, I'll wait. She said to him, I'm bleeding heavily. It will take time, a long time. In another translation, there are lots of women here, and there are good ones here, more beautiful than me, prettier than me. He learned from this that she hadn't sinned. She must have said this to all who came to her. So eventually he manages to get her out of there. And this story is not easy. Thinking of Bruria that has to, put pressure on her husband to move. He doesn't do it by himself. And him thinking that if you're kidnapped and you're a whore, you have any control over this, or you can not sin, and that it's a sin, and thinking that she may not deserve getting a miracle. But we face the reality of women being kidnapped and being used sexually. And now Nurit's words. When the house was destroyed and the thugs' strength was overpowering, Bruria's sisters was kidnapped and was put in a brothel. Bruria's gaze and voice, urging her husband to redeem her sister, cried her terror from the desecration of the body and soul in the darkness and horror. And Rabbi Meir, what did he say? If sin was not done with her, a miracle will be done. If she sinned, no miracle will be done for her. For whom is the concern? Not for the soul of the miserable woman, but for the details of the halacha. She will be freed by a miracle only if he will find her pure. In a place where there is no freedom, it was demanded of her to act like a free person. He went and found her pure and granted her redemption. How strange. Had she been raped in captivity, no miracles would be done for her? And we, whose world on October 7th was destroyed, and we saw women and young girls kidnapped, and our ears heard stories of horrors and rape. From that moment on, our heart hasn't ceased to width and bleed, and our spirit hasn't stopped going mad, and our bodies haven't stopped hurting with all our heart and all our might. For those women who don't see the light of day and don't see the light of humanity. Darkness ruled them. Their bodies are disgraded, and their spirits are being ravaged. Our cries touch theirs and hope for their redemption and freedom, and call for miracles and higher powers that will move powers below until they are saved from their captivity and go on being saved on their return. So first, Nurit expresses her uncomfortability with Rabbi Meir's concept that you can judge such a woman. And then she shares that they heard horrible stories before the women, and some of the women returned, and after they returned we heard more horrible stories. And our heart is going mad at these women. And what are we doing? We pray for them that higher powers will appear and help Lesaya, help the lower powers, our powers, to redeem them. So she relates to the story of the voices that care, and she's trying to bring these voices and help here again. That miracles will be done, and they deserve those miracles, no question. There isn't any question about this. But she also adds that we pray that those miracles or powers will happen also when they will come back, because we know that many people that were saved but were tormented in the Nova have horrible difficulties of managing their souls now. So they will need help from heavens also when they are coming back. Now we will move to a different survivor and read a story by a Midrash, by Gili Zivan, who is from kibbutz Saad. The terrorists didn't manage to break into the kibbutz because the people from the other kibbutzim called kibbutz Saad and warned them that the terrorists are on their way to them, and saved the life of the folks of the kibbutz. But as Gili described to me, she told me that when, after many hours, when they went out of the sealed rooms and saw the pillars of clouds in the kibbutzim around there, the smell of burnt, they were a part of the Churban. They were removed to Yam HaMelech for several months, and then came back. She was in touch with her friends from the kibbutzim around them, and heard the awful stories, and knew that they're moving also from place to place. And in her Midrash, she talks about the moving from place to place, which reminded her the punishment that God gave Cain after killing Abel, that he will wander on the land and won't be able to have a safe place. And it's weird because in the story of Cain is the terrorist, and here this fate falls on the victim. So she plays with this in her Midrash and gives voice to the pain of this period of having no home. The name of her, I brought just some of the Midrash because it's long, but you'll be able to find it online in other places. And of course, in the next volume of Dirshuni in English, I'll put all these Midrashim. The name of the Midrash is "All your brothers and sisters' bloods are crying to me from the soil." All your brothers and sisters' bloods are crying to me from the soil. And now it's the real quote. "And while they were in the field, and Cain rose up on his brother Abel and killed him." So at the beginning, the part that I skipped and made a little misunderstanding here, she explains that we shouldn't read the original verse just on the brother, but on these days on all the brothers and sisters. And she relates to what is it, a blood of a sibling that is crying from the soil. The first blood, she relates to the very famous Mishnah of how each person is unique, and all his offsprings. When you kill a person, you kill all his offsprings. And now we will continue. She relates to other elements in the story. The field, here we read in the verse that they were in the field, Cain and Abel, where they were while Cain stood up and killed him. The field, she asks? There were many fields there, fields ready for planting, wheat fields that had not yet sprouted, Negev fields waiting for rain. Rather, Scripture shortened it to the field, to teach us that Cain had no patience and all the fields laid out up to the border were in his eyes like one small plot of land. And he rushed and crossed the distance, aimed the rifle, and killed him. And not just one Cain was there, but many, hundreds, breaking through, crushing and slaughtering. And a girl in Kfar Azza watches and keeps her silence. She doesn't make a sound and says in her heart, "Whoever finds me will kill me." This is a quote of Cain's words, but now the victim is saying this. She's afraid to make a sound like all the rest that were staying hours in quiet. And a boy jumps from a smoldering shelter room and asks, "Where can I hide?" For she has struck dead so many, and her dead are immense. This is a quote from Proverbs. So each of them is quoting as if verses that describe their condition, their fear that echoes other fears in the past. And the soil whose mouth gaped wide to take the bloods of her brothers and sisters, groans from the burden of pain. Will the soil of the Negev ever be consoled? Will it ever give its strength again? Will the earth ever sprout grass, plant bearing seed, trees giving their fruits, like they were blessed to do in the creation of plants, of trees? But now she's moving to the toughest part of the Midrash. And Cain went out from before God, and he settled in a land of Nod, east of Eden. So the fate of Cain was to move from place to place, and he settled eventually, or maybe was moving back and forth in the land of Nod. What is the land of Nod? There's no explanation, but it's clearly that Nod has the root of Nedida, of wandering. And now she relates to the fate of her and her friends and kibbutz. And for us, the story went the other way. As is written, for a generation of reversals they are. This in Deuteronomy, there is this phrase on generation of reversals. So our story is the opposite. This time, this is not Cain who's doing the wandering, but the survivors who were saved from the fire and sword. And he settled in the land of Nod, for whoever escaped the blasted land became a trembling wanderer in the land. In the land of Nod, the land to where all the refugees wander, wandering from here to there all the days. Another thing, in the land of Nod, as one nad berosho. Now she's giving a different meaning to Nod, not Nod from wandering, but from lanud, to move your head. So she says, land of Nod, precisely as nad berosho, nods with their head, for the veteran women of Be'eri nod their heads and say, "For today you have chased us from the face of the soil." This is also a quote of Cain that says, "You chased me from the face of the soil," but now these are these women that has to say this. So the question is, what is it? The dor tahapuchot, generation of reversals. What is it that the victim is not only being killed, but also has to wander and lose their home, lose their safe place? It's a punishment over a punishment. This is what she experienced, and she realizes that her friends from the different kibbutzim that she quotes, the specific stories that people told her personally, this is their experience. So I will just summarize that we read now the Midrashim of the first part of Midrashim written by women after October 7th, sharing with us their experiences and the way I grew up on the stories of the traditional stories of the destructions of the first and second temple, and those descriptions in Echaraba and other places made those images in our collective memory and imagination of what a destruction is. So these testimonies and midrashim will be the way we will remember and think of, and what we will try to learn from this destruction that fell upon us. So next time we will meet and read midrashim of other women and their experiences. Thank you.